Hey guys, how are you doing? Thanks for tuning in, coming back, and hanging out. And if you're new here, I'm Jim. Great to meet you, and thanks for coming by. I'm here to help you make more beautiful photos, and I do that by removing the confusion and complexity that sometimes comes with these editing tools. It's not hard, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. Let's get into it. Okay, today I'm in Luminar 4, and I'm taking a photo that is fairly flat and not very colorful, and I want to turn it into something quite a bit more beautiful. And in today's video, I'm going to share 5 different tips or ideas that are going to help you do just that. Let's get going. Okay, here's the photo. This was shot in Wales at sunset, but it's fairly flat and not very colorful. And after a few quick edits in Luminar, I turned it into that. I'm going to reset these filters and we're going to hop into it. Okay, so here's the base photo, and after using the light tool, which is basically raw develop, I was able to get to that. So as you can see, a slight temperature and tint adjustment, a little bit of contrast, and a little bit of lift in the shadows, and that put me from there to there. Quick, simple, and I recommend starting with the light tool just to kind of kick off your editing session. Next up, I went to AI Enhance, and over here, as you can see, I went fairly heavy, about 41. It does a great job of lifting the light, but you do have to be careful if you use it excessively. It does impact color and contrast and things like that. So be sort of careful and gentle, for lack of a better word, with how you implement that filter. Next up, I went into the color tool, and here I give it a little bit of saturation and vibrance, just trying to bring that color up and to make it a little bit more beautiful. And the last step here on the Essentials tab was Landscape Enhancer, and I just added Golden Hour just to pop that sun. It was barely out of frame to the left, and there's a nice warm glow coming across the photo, but prior to Golden Hour, you can see it's fairly muted, and I wanted to use that to bring it up. It does apply basically globally across the photo, and I'm totally fine with that. I think it enhances the look that I'm going for. Okay, now I'm over on the Pro tab, and tip number 1 here is dodge and burn. I did quite a bit of dodge and burn. As you can see, it makes a big difference in the photo. Let me turn that off one more time. There's before, and here's after dodge and burn. You can see that the light is very much different. So all you do is you click Start Painting, and you come over here, and you can choose Lighten or Darken, and you choose your strength. Now, I recommend starting fairly low, and what I did here is I basically painted a low strength of Lighten across the sky and the water, and then I went over to Darken and did a low strength of about 25, and I applied that here to the hills, and the hills there, and this little sandbar. All I'm trying to do with dodge and burn is create a little contrast. Contrast is the difference between the dark parts and the brighter parts, so I'm just sort of accentuating that. And keep in mind that does accentuate the brightness and the intensity of the colors, so just be careful. But dodge and burn is tip number 1. Use that tool. It's very simple. You just paint it in where you want something to be brighter or darker. I generally have done that just in the areas like around the sandbar or the hills here. But in this photo, I also applied it across the sky and the water. One more time, there's before and there's after. Big difference. Okay, tip number 2 is actually on the color enhancer, and that is something, it's a tool that I absolutely adore. I've got videos about it if you want to check it out there after this video is over. But color enhancer is very powerful, gives you a lot of control over your colors in your image, and I used it to really start to bring those colors back to life, as you can see here. So a little bit of brilliance and warmth, a little bit of color contrast. I love this slider because it basically, as the name implies, allows you to pick a color and create more contrast. Now, as I just said in dodge and burn, contrast is the difference between dark and bright. So you're creating contrast, but you're doing it in the colors. So if you choose a color, I chose blue, and then drag the amount, you're creating more contrast in that color, which means that color gets lightened, and the color opposite that color on the color wheel gets darkened. So in this case, I'm choosing blue to be lighter, which is going to help me kind of like a dodge and burn in that it's going to brighten the blues, which is fairly significant in the sky and the water here, but it's going to darken the opposite color, which is kind of the orangey yellows. And so if I turn that off, you can see the blues a bit darker here, and it's a bit more muted on the oranges and yellows over on the left. But now that I turn this on, those oranges and yellows got a little bit more intense because they're darker, and the blues look better because they're brighter. So that comes in really handy. And the last section here is in the advanced settings. It's a drop-down menu. It normally looks like that. You click on that, and you can come in shadows, midtones, and highlights to make adjustment to your photo. I just went to highlights, and all I did is try to create a little bit more pop in those colors. in the highlights. And so I went negative to go a little bit bluer on cyan and red. I went negative to go a little bit more towards the magenta, and I went to the positive or to the right to get a little bit more of that blue and the yellow blue. It's just personal preference. I recommend experimenting, but overall color enhancer took me from that before to that current state. Very big difference. Okay, at this point, I was pretty happy with this photo. Once again, let me show you the before and the after. We've come a long way, but I wasn't done, so I wanted to add a new adjustment layer. So I went over here to the adjustment tab, or the layers tab, and you just click plus, add new adjustment layer. And I've got this new adjustment layer, and I went in and grabbed a couple of more tools to make some more adjustments. The first one was AI Enhance, and here's tip number 3, and that is you can mask that in. I have generally used AI Enhance and specifically AI Accent as a global adjustment, but you can mask it in. So I dragged the slider to get it kind of where I wanted it, but I really just wanted to impact basically the lower 2/3 of the photo. So I chose gradient mask, and I dragged that mask across the photo. So I'm going to click on brush to show you what I did. And you can see the gradient mask came in straight across. And then I came back with the brush mask and erased it from this section because it was creating a little bit too much contrast in these clouds. Because if you notice, the clouds here are a little bit darker and they were getting a little bit, I don't know, I didn't like them, to be honest. So I erased it from there, but kept the contrast and that sort of thing on the rest of the photo. Keep in mind, as I said in the first tab, when we were on the base layer and I used AI Accent, it impacts light and contrast, and therefore it impacts the intensity of the colors. So you want to be careful. So consider, and that's tip number 3, consider using AI Enhance, and specifically the AI Accent, with some sort of mask. In this case, I use a combination of gradient and brush to get to the look that I wanted, but I really just wanted to impact the lower 2/3 of the photo, and I wanted to avoid this section here. And I think it did a great job for me. Let me hit done so we can be done with the masking. And before, you can see it's a little bit tamer and a little bit darker in those areas. And with the after, it's a little bit brighter, a little bit more pop, and it does have a little bit more contrast. Okay, next was AI structure. And here's tip number 4, and that is consider using it globally. I often will take negative structure, which is you take it to the left to soften up the details. I will often do that and then paint it in just to the sky or the water. But a photo like this, even these little boats, I might be worried that I'm going to lose detail there, but it's not a big impact because it's such a small component of the photo. So in a photo like this, unless you're printing it maybe really, really big, which is not going to be that common, I think you're fine to just do a global adjustment. Let me show you the difference here. So here's the before in the sky. You can see that it's a little bit rougher, and after, you can see now it's a little bit softer. Now if I move over here to these boats, let me do the same thing. Here's before, so you can see the water as well, but the boat's a little bit crisper, and after, everything's a little bit softer, but it's not a major difference. And again, I think that's because the boats are such a small item in the photo that losing a little bit of detail there is not that big a deal. So give some consideration to that if you have the right photo, and that's tip number 4. And then tip number 5 is just pay attention to your colors. I went back into the color tool here, and what I did is I went into advanced settings and I grabbed the blue and I pulled the saturation down. If you looked at that blue before, let me show you the before. The blue over here is getting a little bit electric, and of course the boats are kind of blue as well. And we all know these boats were not going to be blue, they were white. So I took that down globally because it did reduce it in the boats, which is really my goal here, but I also liked how it reduced it in the clouds. Because of the color contrast and some of the other adjustments I've made, I'm getting a lot of pop in that blue, and it was looking a little bit electric. So one more time, there's before the blue saturation reduction, and there's after. So that's tip number 5, is pay attention to those individual colors, and don't hesitate to go back into those individual color channels here in the color tool and make adjustments to sort of soften some of the impact of the other editing adjustments you've made. And that's it, my friends. That's 5 tips for making impactful photos. There's before and there's after. I think we've come a really long way, and you can see the before and after. Oh, one other thing I forgot to tell you. I did do an erased image layer, and that was because I wanted to erase the bird there. And let me show you that. There you go. There's the bird is gone, and there were a couple of little, not waves, but a couple of ripples in the water over here, and I took those out as well. So there's before and there's after. And that's my photo, my friends. One more time, before and after, and the sliding window shows you you can have a massive impact by doing small things. It's that incremental improvement and stacking of edits that makes a huge impact in the long run. That's it for today, my friends. I do appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Tune in again soon for more videos, and I'll be here to help you out. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Take care, and adios.